This episode of the Hangar Deck Podcast is brought to you by Cover, the cluster for unmanned vehicles and robotics. Cover is a member-supported organization promoting international unmanned systems and robotics activities. Cover bridges the gap between academics and industry and provides a trusted partner to design, develop, test, and market new ideas. Cover promotes member activities, both online and at industry trade shows, and coordinates opportunity-driven teams to meet project goals. For more information or to become a member, call 610-572-2976. That is 610-572-2976. Or visit cover.org today. That's Charlie Uniform Victor Romeo.org.
So the video recording's going.
It's a ghost.
Right.
Let's get it on.
Let's reduce this.
I should have worn a more colorful shirt so I don't blend into everything.
Yeah, I apologize, guys, if I'm a little out of it. I've been up since about 3 a.m. I had to do a sim session this morning with some students. So
Yikes.
it's been a long day.
Steve,
know the drill.
Thanks for joining us. If you have feedback, you might want to turn down your volume just a little bit, Steve.
Okay, I'm not hearing any feedback. Are you guys getting it on your end from me?
No, well, no, we're good. We're good.
Did
All
you hear
right.
that sound? It sounded like a turkey hen yelping.
Hey, you want to shoot it?
I know all about that now.
You going to shoot it?
All right. All right, welcome back to the Hangar Deck Podcast. I'm your host, Pitchlock Pete, and it's been a while, but we are back in studio again. On my right, Fast Eddie.
Fast Eddie.
What's going on, Ed? On my left, Raging Rick. And tonight, our aviation contributor, Andy White. What's going on, Andy?
Hey, guy. Good to have you. Thanks for having me back over here.
Anhedral Andy. What's up?
Anhedral Andy, a name that is stuck with you. And
Yeah,
then,
it's a good one,
That is
man.
dumb.
Yeah, I know.
Dumb.
I
Well,
love it.
I challenge you to come up with a new Delta Chi name. Right? Okay. Well, tonight I got to say, wow, what a month it's been in May. We did a couple of episodes. We got it out there. If you haven't seen them or heard them, Mr. Del Lowry is one of our most recent guests. He is an author of the Boneyard Almanac. Go check out that episode on www.thehangardeck.com. So tonight, we got a full crew in studio, and, we don't have a guest tonight, but tonight we decided to do an aircraft pick of the week story. And with that being said, obviously we're doing a historic airplane. The guys have prepared it. I think Fast Eddie locked himself in a room for about a week and came up with one of his favorites.
I locked him into a room for a week. You know?
Yeah,
I got tired of putting up with
Was
him.
I supposed to be doing something in there?
Well, we know what you're doing, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Ed, what are we talking about tonight for
this-
aircraft pick of the week?
This is going to be a great discussion. We're going to be talking about the B-25 Mitchell, which the venerable warbird B-25 Mitchell is manufactured by North American Aviation, is named for Major General Billy Mitchell, the American aviation pioneer. It's a two-engine medium bomber, very recognizable aircraft, and we produced about 10,000 of them. Quite a story, just to give a quick history of the aircraft, is based on essentially 1939 specs. It was obviously Europe was devolving into war, and there was quite a few aircraft being developed at the time. But the specs were for a 2,400-pound payload medium bomber with a 1,200 nautical mile range and 300 mile per hour maximum speed. Aircraft was there's quite a story of previous versions that were going to go to France and Britain that actually didn't happen. It looked like we were going to get into the war, so the aircraft wound up a second version of the aircraft wound up going into production. actually went into production by 1941. So things happened quick back then. Going from the drafting table, the drawing table to an aircraft actually being out there flying missions.
Much faster than today's military acquisition
Yeah,
programs.
just a little bit quicker.
Oh,
back
let's
then.
not
Yeah.
go there.
We're not.
Just a
Job
little bit.
security.
Yeah, and I know a lot of folks have heard, about North American aviation and all the historic aircraft that they built. I came across something when I was reading. I have not confirmed this yet, but when the Mitchell went into production, supposedly it was the first time ever that a manufacturer had a military trainer, bomber, and fighter in production simultaneously. Is that they built the Texan, T6 Texan, SJN or AT6.
That's fun jet for a fun airplane.
Yeah. I mean, they're still all over the place out there.
Sure.
Obviously, the B-25 and the P-51. So I have not verified that, but I thought that was a pretty cool tidbit about North American when I was reading about the B-25. But it's powered by the venerable Wright, the double cyclone, the R-2600. Obviously, those engines were upgraded quite a bit during the war. Payload increased. What I mentioned previously was just the original specs that the aircraft was designed around. It was built in 2 spots in the States, in Inglewood, California, which was the main production site for North American, and also in Kansas City, Kansas. By all accounts, from what I've read, is a great flying aircraft. Very forgiving, quite different than the B-24, which I think we've talked about with Andy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great handling qualities, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. Its advent, it went out there as in production as a medium bomber, and actually became quite a strafing aircraft, quite a low level aircraft with many low level ground support roles and anti-shipping roles. But the thing it sounds like it really handled well. And the only gripe that aircrew have about it is that it's apparently an extremely loud aircraft, and I think it was because of the space in the nacelle didn't allow for a lot of room for the stacks. So the stacks apparently direct the noise directly at the crew compartment,
Directly at the fuselage.
Yeah. So the big joke about the B-24, how hard that thing was to fly. So that the pilot, the guy in the left seat, you could tell them because they all had big, giant left arms. Their left arms were bigger than their right arms. The B-25 Mitchell all the air crew are deaf. Is the story?
Right, big Popeye arms, huh?
Sounds like P3 aircrew.
Yeah, exactly.
So Ed, you say we made 10,000 total. That's a lot of aircraft. In a lot of pictures, you see a lot of different variants. It's very recognizable, shape, but then there's appear to be a lot of different types as well. You mentioned the different missions, of course. So can you talk about the variants and the many uses the aircraft saw?
Absolutely. And folks may see like the aircraft, the B-25s that are still flying with some of the commemorative flying clubs around the country, and you see just so many pictures of them, and some of them you see a lot of the nose is different. You see a lot of guns hanging off of them. So obviously the A and the B version were the originals, were produced as medium bombers, and the aircraft it never flew with the 8th Air Force. It did fly in pretty much every theater. In the European theater, they found that it had a lot greater range than the A-20 Havoc or the A-26 Invader. So it was used extensively in the Mediterranean by the 9th and 12th Air Forces, and that was just a function of the missions that they were flying and the ranges they were flying. But it really cut its teeth and was used extensively in the Pacific. And what they found was, as a medium bomber with the jungle canopy and their targets in the Pacific, it wasn't as effective. So they started flying it down lower in order to be more efficient at hitting targets. And they realized, hey, this thing flies great down at low altitude. They started using it a lot more in a low-level attack role, and some of the variants you see that came out that with the original changes they made to the A and B, you've got the C, the D, and the J are generally termed the strafers. They're the aircraft with the forward-firing guns, and they also found out the thing was awesome at anti-shipping. Doing in those low-altitude roles. Some folks may have heard of skip bombing, skipping the bombs on the water surface and taking out ships.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very effective at that. One of my favorite variants is the G variant, which is really what's so cool is it was literally
because it's called G. What's up, G?
What's up, G? What's up, G? It's we all love the AC-130 gunship. The Spectre. What a cool thing, cool machine. The G version of the B-25 is really the grandfather to that whole gunship concept. And what they did was they threw 250 cals and a pretty big cannon, a 75 millimeter M4 cannon in the nose. And then
nice.
They had great luck with that, in ground attack and low level missions. And they came out with the H version, which is actually the H is probably my favorite. And you see, there's actually a lot of great pictures of the H. What they did was they put 450 cals in the nose, new 75 millimeter cannon, had the same punch as the M4. This one was the M5, but it was a lot lighter. They had 4 more 50 cals in pod locations around the aircraft, 250 cals in the dorsal turret. So they had 10 forward-firing 50 cals plus the cannon, and they also threw a tail turret in the back. So they had a tail gunner with 450 cals. And then, so the saying from North American was, hey, you tangle with the B-25, you get 10 coming and 4 going.
Wow.
Yeah. So and then back when I was talking about the strafers, the C and D and the J, going back to the J, that was really a multi-role. Like later in the war, they retained all of the good qualities about the aircraft as a medium bomber, and they basically put the gun package and the survivability package of the C's and the D's on there. And that aircraft, the J, had quite a post-war history as well. I mean, they flew J models. The Air Force flew J models up till 1960, which is pretty impressive.
Well, when you mention the numbers of strictly 10,000 of these aircraft built, you go, wow, that's going to be a long period of time. And then,
it's amazing. And we haven't even talked about the number of countries that we, through Lend-Lease that also flew the Mitchell.
Yeah, and then you talk, when you're talking about, the H model and then the J model, and then, as it's advancing in history, you're adding new models and new capabilities to the plane, and I just think, wow, 10,000 aircraft. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a lot of aircraft.
Well, you can't talk about the B-50 or B-25 without mentioning the Doolittle Raid. Anniversary was last April, right?
Yep.
The 18th or 19th, yeah. Yep, just passed.
So I got Rick in studio as our Air Force resident guy because, he's cool and groovy like that.
Someone's got to keep you guys straight.
That's right. This is, I think, recognized as the greatest raid in U.S. history. And it's fascinating to me that it required the U.S. Navy to carry the...
No, we just let you guys play so you could, you do a whole lot better making movies than the Air Force. So
Show operability.
It is a great movie if you ever watch some of the documentaries about the Doolittle Raid. I think Pearl Harbor was, one of the movie Pearl Harbor had a sequence in there about the Doolittle Raid. But Rick, I know you know a lot about it, so tell us a little bit about the Doolittle Raid.
Sure. Basically, just a little bit of reading, and the whole Doolittle Raid started, obviously right after Pearl Harbor, devastating event to the U.S. And we needed a little morale boost. Well, in January of 1942, a submarine commander happened to be walking around Norfolk and came up with this great idea. Now, who in their right mind would ever think about launching a medium bomber off an aircraft carrier? I mean, it's got
nuts.
Yeah, it's got to take somebody that's nuts, i.e. a sub commander. Down there, doesn't get enough air, kills off a few brain cells to come up with this kind of idea. So he floats the idea to his commander, who sends it up to Mitchell, and then says, hey, I know just the guy. We'll put Doolittle on it. So sure enough, they talked about it, kicked it around the coffee table there and said, hey, that sounds like a good idea. So just to make sure this is going to work, they had the Hornet, which was just launched out of the shipyards there. So they threw a B-25 on it, and they took off. They had They had 2 aircraft that took off. They were able to complete a takeoff successfully. They had a very light load. And they said, hey, close enough. All right, let's start training crews to do this for real. So, so in January, they did this little test flight. They put the Hornet underway to go to the west coast of the U.S. to pick up some airplanes. Meanwhile, they had 24 sets of crews training down in Florida, down in Pensacola. doing basically short field takeoffs. I was going to say takeoffs and landings, but they didn't worry about that. They just short field takeoffs and some low-level bombing. Obviously, in order to do something like this, they had to prep the airplane, do some special modifications. First of all, the B-25 had a payload capability of 3,000 pounds, but the plan was to actually only use 2,000 pounds, which is 4 bombs. There were 3 high explosive and 1 incendiary bomb.
Say that 3 times.
Hey, Rick, did they know they were going to use the B-25 right away? How did they decide on that aircraft?
They actually looked at a couple different airplanes, one of which really caught my attention was the B-23. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I looked it up, and it basically it looks kind of like a DC-3, so a tail dragon DC-3, but it had larger engines on it, almost like B-17 engines on it.
Andy, are you familiar with the B-23?
Yeah, it's
The Dragon. I just looked it
it's
up.
kind of an ugly looking plane, to be honest with you. I think there's one actually still not flyable. Well, maybe flyable. I believe there's one in the one of the museums up in Seattle. I believe has one.
Cool.
So anyway, the B-25 was selected because it had the best payload and range capabilities. Unfortunately, the B-23, other than being ugly, it didn't quite match up. But so they decided to carry 4 bombs instead of a complement of 6. They stripped the airplane down as much as they could. Matter of fact, they took out the tail guns like Ed was talking about earlier, and they put these big old broomsticks back there and painted them and put yellow tips on them to make them stand out a little more, so that to make it appear that there were guns in the back. So if airborne fighters did roll in on the thing, they'd see guns back there and try to back off a little bit.
I'd never heard that
Guns,
before.
guns.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, they had different bladders, additional fuel bladders they put on the airplane. And one thing I found kind of interesting, they had one big bladder right in the bomb bay, sitting on top of everything. And once all the fuel was out of it, they had to try to collapse this thing so that the crew could walk walk back and forth through the airplane. Well, there's a vent on the outside of the airplane that they were using. They turned it into the face forward into the airstream in order to pressurize the tank to help fuel feed. And then once all the fuel was gone, they turned it the opposite direction, so the Venturi effect would create a low pressure, and it actually sucked the bladder down into a small, usable size that they could push off to one side and get back to the bomb bay to arm the bombs.
Yeah, how long would it take us to test something like that and field
yeah.
it nowadays?
Yeah.
Oh, that's 2 years and about 30 contractors.
Oh, yeah. And millions of dollars, thousands of lives, yeah.
But that's innovation in the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
That's thinking outside the box. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I want to say even one of the rear crewmen was charged with filling. They brought like 5-gallon, however many they could carry, of
Yep.
5-gallon avgas cans up there, and once they would, he was back there filling that thing as they went until that supply was depleted.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously sweat and gas the whole way. I mean, FEs. We
Oh, yeah.
talk about that all the time.
Right.
And when we get into the historical, facts of the mission,
Sure. So those are the kinds of things. One other modification, again, because the B-25 was a medium bomber, it had the Dorton bomb sight, which really works well at medium and high altitudes. Well, they found out it wasn't all that effective at low altitude, so they pulled that thing out, and they had this little jerry-rig device that, I mean, like something I could have built in my garage. This little side plate that had like this little piece of angle iron held in place with a wing nut, and they could set it at a particular angle, and that's what they used for a bombing site. So it was none of the mechanization that you heard before about with the Norton bomb sight and the B-17 as far as the bombardier taking control of the airplane and actually driving the airplane. Now, this is all, it was a voice-commanded aircraft at that point. Hey, we need a little left. Hey, a little right. Okay.
1 degree left, 1 degree right.
Yeah, there you go. And so it was really a kind of a TLR. That looks
So
about
Ed
right.
would pretty much be disqualified for a mission like this then.
Yeah, because he doesn't know his left from his right, but let's not even go there. So by the end of March, everybody was all trained up. They got the Hornet to Alameda, California, loaded up the 16 airplanes on the deck. And at first they were going to try to sneak out at night so nobody would know what they're doing. Well, with fog and some other stuff, it forced them to leave right smack in the middle of the day with 16 B-25s strapped to the deck of the Hornet going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge.
Nice.
And tell me that didn't make the newspapers. No, it's a secure. We're worried about OPSEC and COMSEC.
OPSEC back then. No,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think so.
So they headed westbound, all that stuff. The master plan was to get within 500 miles of Japan, launch the guys. And, oh, by the way, with that many airplane on the flight deck, and I think the flight deck was almost 700 feet long, if I recall.
Right.
And but
Sounds close.
Yeah. It was 702 feet. Yeah, that's it.
5 inches, right, and a quarter
yeah.
inch.
Then, anyway, with all the airplanes put on deck there, the guys that first took off had like 315 feet for their takeoff roll. That's all. And so, as each aircraft took off, the next guy had, another 30 feet or another 40 feet. But initially, they only had 315 feet was the first takeoff.
That's not very long.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
It's unbelievable.
That's a football field in a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So they head on westbound. They were going to get within 500 miles, launch, and head towards Tokyo, drop their bombs, and recover in China. Well, sure enough, best laid plans of mice and men, yak, yak, yak. At 650 miles out, there's a picket ship, a Japanese picket ship that picks them up, starts sending out a distress call. So sure enough, the rest of the fleet that was going with the Hornet go over there and blow this guy out of the water. But they said, well, we can't risk it. We got to launch now. So not only, instead of launching it at 500 miles and range was critical, they launched at 650 miles. But at least it was a rainy, overcast day with over 20 knot winds and really rough seas. There were a couple times when the waves were actually
Coming over the bow.
Broaching over the bow.
Right.
Just what you want to be doing as far as launching a bomber off a deck.
That's right. And for the first time for Air Force guys on a Navy ship.
Yeah. And the last.
And the last time, right?
So everybody gets airborne. It works out great. They all make it to Tokyo. They drop their bombs because they had to launch early and had unexpected winds. Everybody was incredibly low on gas. So the master plan was to go into China and land there. Well, they did. Some of them did head to China. There was one aircraft that was particularly short on gas. They ended up going to Vladivostok up in Russia, and they actually landed there. And the Russians said, "Hey, great airplane. We'd like this." And so they absconded with the airplane and then interned the crew for like 3 or 4 years. One interesting little side note on that is that the crew was initially reported as AOL. They were absent without leave because they know they had landed somewhere and had just disappeared. So they thought these guys had turned traitor or something and just disappeared. Well, it turned out no, obviously they hadn't. They were being held by the Russians. So that was one aircraft. The other aircraft went down to China, and unfortunately, pretty much all those airplanes crash landed somewhere. And of those 16 airplanes, like I said, one landed. All the rest of them crashed. And unfortunately, in that crash, there were, I believe, 3 killed in crashes. There were 8 captured by the Japanese. Several of them were executed, and then they had a couple of guys die by disease in prison. But as they were being held, but everybody else survived, and all the survivors for years after that, they would meet down in Pensacola, and they had goblets. They would drink a toast, and to toast
to pay respect for
exactly.
what the mission was, what their shipmates were, what their fellow airmen were,
and I believe at the last anniversary which was not this last one a few months ago or a few weeks ago, but a year ago, there were 4 of them remaining, and they decided to finish off the bottle of brandy or whatever they had.
Very nice.
And, yeah, it was
wow.
It was pretty interesting.
Remarkable story. It's a part of our history. You could see it in movies. You can see it in
Yeah, and I have to, one more plug for this whole Doolittle Raid thing. In reading and studying about we haven't even scratched the surface. There's so many great stories associated with this. The modifications they had to make to the ships and all that stuff. And everything else that went into to pulling this raid off. And there's a great website. It's the official Doolittle Raid website. They have personal stories, all that stuff there. Very, very interesting. If you have time, look it up.
Great story.
Do you know what might have what came of the one that wound up in Russia? There's I've heard rumors here and there that it's still around, but in your research, did you come across anything about that?
No, I just know that once they landed, it was immediately confiscated and.
Because there's some crazy Russians.
There's some pictures out there of it sitting. They made a wheels down landing, in a field, and
it's one of the premier Russian fighters right now. Fighter bombers. They've kept it, converted it, upgraded it. It's still flying. Right. Andy, the B-25. You've recently seen one in action, right?
Yeah, down there at the Military Aviation Museum in Virginia. They had their air show a couple of weeks ago. So, and they have one in their collection of aircraft down there. It's called Wild Cargo. I want to say it's a C model. I know it's a clear glass, nose on it, not a gun nose type. Though it does have the side blistered 50s on the side. So I want to say it's a C model. Beautiful airplane. Their nose art name for it is Wild Cargo, and they come up with that name. You can Google this up if you want to get all the facts, but it's long and short of it is the aircraft worked as a cargo hauler for a short time during the 50s or 60s, hauling exotic animals out of South America or something like that, and it crashed on the runway.
No, really, there were animals.
Supposedly some animals got loose in the aircraft. Sounds like a Sam Jackson movie there, right? But animals are loose in the airplane.
Not snakes on a plane, is it?
They make a landing, a crash landing. Skidding down the runway, and things, fuselage breaks open, and wild animals are running everywhere. So that's why the museum kept the name of their. It doesn't represent necessarily a World War II squadron or aircraft, but it's the nose out works. So
right. Very cool story. Yeah. Very cool story. So they flew this airplane 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. They do a great show down there. As air shows go, we've all been to military air shows, but I'm not a big fan of those just because you're at a base, you're far away. This place is small. You're right up near the airplane. They're literally taxiing within feet of you. The takeoff runs are right, less than 100 yards from you. You got a B-25 at full throttle, rotating.
Nothing cool. There's nothing
the noise is incredible.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did it strike you as a loud aircraft?
Very loud.
As it's been portrayed.
Yeah, as I said, the exhaust stacks are short. So like any radial engine, it makes a heck of a lot of noise. It's a good sound. Noise though. Yeah, great sound.
That's right.
Just a story about the noise of a B-25. Battle of Midway movie, horrible movie, right?
Right.
Charlton Heston and all them guys back in, 77, I think, it come out.
Yeah, it was in Sense-Around.
Yeah, exactly, in Sense-Around. So I'm like 8 years old. My dad takes me to see this movie. And the beginning of that movie, they take clips from the movie 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, add in the Sense-Around, and that was my first ever seeing a B-25 on film, and just the noise of those guys starting up on the deck. And then this is the way they portrayed it in the movie is very dramatic. It's awesome. And then just the noise of those guys taking off, low level over the water, up over the coastline.
Had you hooked.
Had
you hooked.
Oh, had me hooked, of course.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, talk about seeing B-25s flying around. Of course, I got to tell my story because I like to hear myself talk. But so I used to fly F-16s flying out of Las Vegas. And so Las Vegas, Nevada, there at Nellis Air Force Base, we used to do a lot of testing in the area up to the north, and west. Anyway, on the east side of the area was a north-south running highway that all the doctors, all the lawyers would follow going down into Las Vegas. So before we did some of these tests, we had to make sure that everybody was out of the way. And sure enough, we're up there getting ready to do some work. And there's some chucklehead coming down the highway there, and he's just a little bit too close to the test area.
Right.
So me and my wingman, we had to go chase this guy off. So I kept my wingman up high, and I did the hunt out of the sun, come zooming straight down on this guy. He's doing about 200 knots.
Rick's got his hands moving now.
He's shooting his watch.
He's
for
doing
those of you
this.
that can't see us in the studio.
Well, here, let me put my hands down. So I'm expecting to see like some Cessna 310 or something, some Twin Comanche or some such thing. And I'm looking through my heads-up display, and I go, holy mackerel, did I go back in the time? Here I'm rolling in on a B-25.
What?
Yo, it was amazing. And so I pulled in, and it was a commemorative Air Force B-25, I guess, heading down to Arizona. And it was just sure, it's pretty cool. Pull up next to him and wave and do all that.
Arm wrist.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All that kind
Awesome.
of stuff. And kind of, hey.
You took both hands off
So
the
you
stick,
did it.
right?
You did a section with him. You joined up and got close. Awesome.
Oh, yeah. And then, I did kind of need to edge him out of the area, so I changed sides and kind of came across his nose, indicating that, hey, you need to go a little more that way and just get the hell out of here so we can go do the thing. But it was, no kidding, I felt like I was just transported back in time, expecting to see some twin out there. And, yeah, it was a twin, all right, but it was a B-25.
Nice.
It was pretty incredible.
Nice. Well, I think it's time for us to take a short break. Lots of great stuff on the B-25. When we come back, I've got a special treat for the team. So stay tuned to the Hangar Deck Podcast. We'll be back after this short break.
Oh, still with us, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
All right, let's check your sound levels real quick. Give me a 10 count.
1, 2, check, 3, 4, check, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Perfect. Okay, so you got plenty of information in the first 30 minutes we went. You ready to go?
Yeah, what kind of questions are you going to ask about flying the airplane or?
Yeah, I mean, real easy. Well, we'll get an intro from you. Real quick background from you, and then how did you get into? I imagine you'll mention the warbirds that you fly and the Yankee Air Force. So first question is,
It's Yankee Air Force.
Yeah, the Yankee Air Museum out of Willow Run, Michigan.
Yeah, so essentially, how'd you get into that? How many different types of aircraft have you flown? What kind of training did you have to do to get qualified to fly the B-25? How often do you fly it? How many guys fly it? I mean, there's questions like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
It'll be.
'Cause I fly for a couple different organizations. Mainly, I fly Yankee Air Museum's B-25. That's where I got checked out, qualified, and then I instructed doing all the instruction for the captains that we upgraded, and then they, did their check ride, obviously with the DPE. But so I'm like a training captain on it, PPE.
Great. So we'll just focus in on the Yankee Air Museum, and then you can go from there.
Okay.
You feel relaxed. There's no pressure here. There's like I said, you probably listened to us for a little bit and got the gist of how it goes. We get a little serious there, and then go a little jovial at the end there. But
Right.
Okay.
All right.
You ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay. And back in. All right, welcome back to the Hangar Deck Podcast, and I told you guys I have something special in store for you. So
Is it chocolatey?
no, it's not. It's not.
Damn.
So Rick's on money tonight. Yeah, let me tell you. So tonight,
sugar.
that's right. We're talking about the B-25 Mitchell. Awesome airplane. A lot of great stories about it. We shared some facts about the Doolittle Raid. We share some facts about the different type of models and how many are produced. Andy talked about seeing one a couple of weeks ago at an air show. But I've got a guy on the line now. His name is Steve Svara. And Steve is a pilot in the cargo industry, but Steve actually flies the B-25 Mitchell for the Yankee Air Museum.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So, yeah, surprise. Got you guys. Steve, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So how's it going, Steve? How are you?
I'm great. How you doing, Pete?
Welcome to the Hangar Deck Podcast. I got to say
welcome, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. From what talking with you earlier, this is great. Our aircraft pick of the week was B-25 Mitchell. You happen to fly for the Yankee Air Museum, the B-25 Mitchell, and the guys are fascinated with it. I'm fascinated with it. I'm sure our audience is fascinated and would love to hear your experiences on the B-25. Can you tell us how you got started out flying this awesome airplane?
Yeah, it was. It all started back when I was about 18 years old. I started flying Wacos and Stearmans, and I kept calling this company called Hogan Air, going to fly their C-47s, fly cargo in them while I was in college for a part-time job. And I was flying the C-47 for them, DC-3. Flew cargo all over the United States in it. Got into the warbird scene down there, was flying a T-28 for a buddy of mine. And then I got linked up. One of our guys that I worked with went up to the Yankee Air Museum and started flying the C-47 up there. So they invited me to come up and fly the C-47. And 15 years later, I'm still up there flying both the C-47 and B-25. So I think I was there about 2 years, and I got checked out as a co-pilot on the B-25 and then upgraded shortly after.
A lot of jealousy in this room right
Yeah,
now.
awesome. Hey, Steve, can you tell us a little bit more about the Yankee Air Museum? Where is it located? How many aircraft do you have?
Yeah, we're located out of Ypsilanti, Michigan, at Willow Run Airport. We have an air show every summer, generally in August. It depends. Every other year we have either the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds there.
Wow.
And then the off years it's a strictly World War II show. So we do, I think it was 2 years ago, we did a huge gaggle. Every B-25 that was around, I think there was 13 or 14 of us, got in formation and did a flyover. And it's just a fantastic show if you can make it out to it.
That's awesome.
We also have a B-17 and a C-47 and a Waco.
Cool.
That are all those are all the flyable aircraft. Then we have just a smattering of other aircraft that are static displays.
Yeah, but how cool is it to fly in formation with 13 other
man.
B-25s?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've done it several times, and the really cool one was up at Oshkosh. It was two B-17s, a B-24, myself and the B-25, and another B-25, and we had two P-51 escorts for Oshkosh show.
Oh.
Very nice. Very nice.
That's cool. So, what exactly did you need to do to get qualified as a captain on the B-25, and how often do you fly?
It's just like it's an actual type rating, so it's no different than getting a type rating in, let's say, a 757 or 747. You go through all the same training requirements. You have to go to an annual ground school every year, and then you go through several training events in the aircraft, obviously, because there's no simulator. And when you're done with the training events, then you take a check ride. And so I started out as a co-pilot, so I went to the ground school and then did all my training as a co-pilot. You know, you do single engine approaches, and we fly this IFR actually, so instrument flight rules in the clouds from air show to air show. So it's IFR certified, and we have to be IFR qualified in it. So we have to shoot non-precision and precision approaches in it to stay qualified annually.
Yeah, Steve, if I remember correctly, the full crew complement was a crew complement of 5. What do you guys normally fly with?
Yeah, we normally fly with 5 to 7 just because we need the extra hands on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So we always generally have a flight engineer.
Did you hear that, Rick?
Yeah.
Just checking.
Well, it's a make-work program. Yeah, we always carry an engineer just in case.
The engineer is actually kind of handy because should there be an emergency, the crossfeed valve is in the back. The co-pilot would have to get up and go move it if we didn't have a flight engineer. If we had to do a manual gear extension, the flight engineer's there to do that. If we have a hydraulic problem, he can refill the hydraulic system. So flight engineer is kind of crucial on the airplane.
Oh.
Now, is that a type-rated FAA flight engineer position, or is it a guy who's an A&P up there working and just knows
exactly.
the aircraft?
It's normally the crew chief on the aircraft that's a flight engineer for us. So
Roger, okay.
So there is hope for us, Andy.
Yeah. I would do that on the weekends in a second,
That's
man.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
But okay, so this is awesome. B-25 flying it, flying it for a while now. How many guys are out there that are flying this thing? Approximately. I mean, there can't be that many.
At the Yankee Air Museum, I believe we have eight pilots for the B-25, and I want to say there's 6 type-rated captains on it currently.
Mm-hmm.
And then we fly it during the air show season, generally from March through, I think we had a show as late as October, but it's very cold because there's no heat in the aircraft. So when you get at altitude in either the early spring or we had a real early, it was the United States Air Force anniversary at Andrews we were invited to. And it was extremely cold going down there, and I can't remember. I want to say it was in April or May, and it was just a cold ride all the way down. So I can't imagine what those guys went through and at altitude with their plug-in electric suits and everything.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you're pretty busy during the show season. How often do you fly? How many hours do you log in during the show season?
Generally between 50 and 100. It depends on my availability to fly the shows. So one of my favorite shows that I really thoroughly enjoy going to is Reading, Pennsylvania, World War II weekend.
Yeah, that's one I need to go
familiar
hit.
with that. And that's coming up here in June. That's a fantastic show. And then obviously our show in August. So
very cool.
Excellent. So, Steve, you've mentioned some other large vintage multi-engine aircraft that you've flown. Can you compare the flying qualities of the B-25? What's it like to fly the machine?
It's like a sports car. It is fantastic. It's extremely responsive for its size. The DC-3, you put an input in, or the C-47, you put an input in, and the airplane thinks about it, and then it starts doing it.
Sounds like a C-130.
B-25 responds fantastic, and the faster you go in it, the better it responds, and the better the handling qualities are. So it's just a fantastic flying airplane. And it is loud. You guys were talking how loud it is. It's because of the short stacks on the engines, and you have a noise-canceling headset on with earplugs in.
And you still are getting
and it's still loud.
Yeah.
So your Mitchells, there's been no modifications. I mean, the stacks and the hearing loss the guys suffered back in the war, you're prone to the same thing because there's been no mod, right?
What was that?
Very good.
He almost got in.
He almost got me.
It's like,
So, Steve,
yeah, it's very much the same as it was then. Ours is unique at the Yankee Air Museum. It's one of 2 C/D models flying, and the way you can tell the difference is where the upper turret's located. So on the early model aircraft, the upper turret's located in the back, and on the J models and the later model B-25s, it's located up in the front.
okay.
So briefing time that I fly for the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum, it's a J model, and the gun turret's up right behind the cockpit.
Hey, Steve, two questions for you. Earlier, when we were talking about the Doolittle Raid, Andy asked me a question that I couldn't answer. One of the airplanes actually went into Russia and landed there. Do you know if the first question I have is, the disposition of that aircraft? Is it still there in Russia? And then the second question I have for you is, I know, at museums they do their best to keep these airplanes running, the best they can. But have you had any close calls, emergencies, that kind of stuff? What has been your experience with that?
Yeah, as far as the Russian aircraft, I've heard the same rumors you guys have, and there's no definitive answer from anyone that I've been able to get whether it's still over there or if it's in China. I heard that the Chinese took it over there and they were using it for aerial firefighting or something. As far as emergencies in the aircraft, I've had a couple engine shutdowns. I sucked an intake valve in, I think it was 3 years ago. Power loss, running real rough. We had paying ride passengers on board, so that was a little
scared the daylights out of them.
Yeah, so I had to shut it. I elected to shut it down, feather it, and we were over the downtown Detroit at the time, and I made it back to Willow Run and did a single engine landing. Approach and landing.
Do you ever joke around at your customers, like put the parachute on and walk in the back and say, see you later?
No, I don't do that, but they're nervous enough half the time. But the cool thing about the Yankee Air Museum, when you do come take a ride with us, if you sit in the back, once we get airborne, you can crawl across the bomb bay, how the guys did it in the real airplane while they were in flight. You can crawl up into the nose and sit in the nose gunner seat. It's just a fantastic experience. If you've never had it,
that sounds really cool.
Really, really highly suggest you come up and take a ride.
Road trip.
So road trip, right?
Road trip.
I want to know. I could probably find it on the website, but how much?
I believe this year it's $425, and that's for an hour ride. So
That's
Nice.
not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
You know,
it's a once in a lifetime experience.
Sounds like a
And we get to fire the 50 cal and stuff.
You can pretend, yeah.
We're over Detroit, right? So
They might pay you to
They
do
would
it.
know the difference
they'll shoot
up there,
back.
right? But the cool thing is briefing time from the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum. It's probably the most authentic cockpit B-25 I've been in. And the turret, you can still operate from the captain's seat. So the guns, the chin gun, the 50 cals on the side are operated. The gun sight is still in there. There's a torpedo launch system that's still installed in the aircraft. It's a fantastic, and it has the original instrumentation in it. It's just a fantastic.
probably more capable than some of the stuff we have today.
Could be. Yeah.
But I got one last question. I know Ed's got probably a follow-on, but Steve, flying the B-25 Mitchell, historic national treasure, with a great history from World War II and on through the 50s and early 60s. Have you flown or had the opportunity to fly with any veterans of the B-25? And if you have, what kind of experience is it like to fly with these guys?
Oh, it's fantastic. We have veterans fly with us quite a bit, and generally at most of the air shows, there's quite a few veterans that are still around that were actually flying the aircraft. So one notable individual was R.E. Cole. It was Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot, and
You flew with Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot.
yeah, he flew on the Yankee Warrior. I want to say it was 4 years ago, and actually signed the side of the aircraft. So if you come up to take a ride, you can still see his signature on the side of the aircraft.
Oh,
That's fascinating.
Nice.
Wow, my jaw has dropped. I think that's awesome. And what was he like? Was he? Did he discuss any of the details? Is he cleared to brief you on all the details of the mission?
Some of the guys were asking him questions, but it was just a neat experience watching him hop back in the saddle and fly the airplane.
Very humbling experience, Steve. Thank you for sharing that with us.
So, Steve, you talked plenty about the flying characteristics of the B-25. On the ground, however, I've heard it's a tricky aircraft to taxi. Is that true?
It's extremely tricky. I call it a nose dragger. The nose wheel is a cast-ring nose wheel, and it's canted forward.
Yeah.
So it has a horrible tendency for the nose wheel to just flop to one side or the other. So you have to taxi it. And the brake linings on this, there's not many left. In fact, I don't know if there's any left. And they're brass, and they're extremely difficult to find and rebuild. So we try not to use the brakes as much as possible. So when you taxi it, you have to, use differential power and really mitigate your energy when you're taxiing.
Interesting.
To not heat the brakes up and wear those brake linings out.
Here at PAX, a frequent visitor is Panchito. They're just across the Chesapeake from us, so they come over here to the test pilot school, and do flights with those guys. And when I was a crewman out there at PAX myself, I obviously, if that thing was up and turning, I'm out there watching. And I noticed that they did a lot of taxiing up and down the runway prior to ever going flying. It seemed taxiing that thing was a class in itself.
Yeah, if you can taxi it successfully, then you'll have no problem flying it, except when you get it back on the ground again and try to slow it down straight ahead.
Wow. Well, guys, what a treat, Steve.
Yeah, it was a treat. Thanks, Steve.
You know, our
Thanks so
audience
much for calling in, man.
Absolutely. Our audience is going to love this. And on behalf of all of us, I mean, unbelievable, right?
Oh, yeah. Very envious, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. So on behalf of the Hangar Deck Podcast, we're going to put this one to bed. So I got to say, for my aviation contributor, Andy White.
Hey, thanks for having me over again.
All right, Andy. Fast Eddie.
Fast Eddie.
And Raging Rick. And, of course, our guest tonight, Steve. Fabulous discussion. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. Stay tuned to the next episode of the Hangar Deck Podcast, and we'll see you soon. And as simple as we come in, that's it. We're out.
All right.
So, Steve, no video tonight for you, but I'd love to. This is our first attempt at a video podcast, also. So,
okay.
So what we did was you're on the screen in the background, but we ran a video podcast in conjunction with the audio. So the audio will be up on the website probably Sunday night, Monday morning, depends on how fast I turn it around. And there's a little bit of post editing in there, and then create the web post and all that stuff. But I think the YouTube video blog will probably be out sooner than that. So if you have my email now, if you want to shoot me your email address, I can shoot you all the details and when it launches.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then
we'll have to. Steve, you were a fantastic guest. You sound great on the radio, man. Yeah, we will have to have him back.
We're talking with Brian to try to get him to talk about the 747-400, but if you guys want to both come back, it would be great to talk to both of you at the same time. I think there's some synergy in that, and then we can get that going.
That'd be great. And if you ever want to talk about the C-47, I think I have more time sleeping in it than most guys have flying.
Oh, awesome.
We'll do that too.
Yeah.
Anytime we get an access to a pilot that's flying vintage airplanes, there's no doubt we want to talk to you.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Dude, I appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys, and I'll be in touch soon.
All right, Steve. Thanks a lot.
All right,
nice
take it easy,
meeting you.
Steve.
Thanks, buddy. See ya.